Hey guys, Lord Naren White here, the Holy Ghost, the one true God. Back with you with the next video in my series. Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. Without further ado, returning to Great Expectations. Enclosed in the letter was a receipt for the debt and costs on which I had been arrested. Down to that moment, I had vainly supposed that my creditor had withdrawn or suspended proceedings until I should be recovered, and I had never dreamed of Joe's having paid the money. But Joe had paid, and the receipt was in his name. What remained for me now but to follow him to the dear old forge, and there to have out my disclosure to him, and my penitent remonstrance with him, and there to relieve my mind and heart of that reserved. Secondly, which had begun as a vague something lingering in my thoughts, and had formed into a settled purpose. The purpose was that I would go to Biddy, that I would show her how humbled and repentant I came back, that I would tell her how I had lost all I once hoped for, that I would remind her of our old confidences in my first unhappy time. Then I would say to her, "Biddy, I think you once liked me very well, when my errant heart, even while it strayed away from you, was quieter and better with you than it has ever been since. If you can like me only half as well once more, if you can take me with all my faults and disappointments on my head, if you can receive me like a forgiven child, and indeed I am as sorry, Biddy, and have as much need of a hushing voice and a soothing hand, I hope I am a little worthier of you than I was, not much, but a little. And Biddy, it shall rest with you to say whether I shall work at the forge with Joe, or whether I shall try for any different occupation down in this country, or whether we shall go away to a distant place where an opportunity awaits me, which I set aside when it was offered, until I knew your answer. And now, dear Biddy, if you can tell me that you will go through the world with me, you will surely make it a better world for me, and me a better man for it, and I will try hard to make it a better world for you." Such was my purpose. After 3 days more of recovery, I went down to the old place to put it in execution, and how I sped in it is all I have left to tell. Chapter 58. The tidings of my high fortunes having had a heavy fall had got down to my native place and its neighborhood. Before I got there, I found the Blue Boar in possession of the intelligence, and I found that it made a great change in the Boar's demeanor. Whereas the Boar had cultivated my good opinion with warm acidity, when I was coming into property, the Boar was exceedingly cool on the subject now that I was going out of property. It was evening when I arrived, much fatigued by the journey I had so often made so easily. The Boar could not put me into my usual bedroom, which was engaged, probably by someone who had expectations, and could only assign me a very indifferent chamber among the pigeons and post-chaises up the yard. But as I had a sound as but I had as sound a sleep in that lodging as in the most superior accommodation the Boar could have given me, and the quality of my dreams was about the same as in the best bedroom. Early in the morning, while my breakfast was getting ready, I strolled round by Sata's house. There were printed bills on the gate and on bits of carpet hanging out of the windows, announcing a sale by auction of the household, furniture, and effects next week. The house itself was to be sold as old building materials and pulled down. Lot 1 was marked in whitewashed knock-knee letters on the brew house. Lot 2 on that part of the main building which had been so long shut up. Other lots were marked off on other parts of the structure, and the ivy had been torn down to make room for the inscriptions. and much of it trailed low in the dust and was withered already. Stepping in for a moment at the open gate and looking around me with the uncomfortable air of a stranger who had no business there, I saw the auctioneer's clerk walking on the casks and telling them off for the information of a catalogue compiler, pen in hand, who made a temporary desk of the wheeled chair I had so often pushed along to the tune of Old Clem. When I got back to my breakfast in the Boar's coffee room, I found Mr. Pumblechook conversing with the landlord. Mr. Pumblechook, not improved in appearance by his late nocturnal adventure, was waiting for me, and addressed me in the following terms.
Young man, I am sorry to see you brought low, but what else could be expected? What else could be expected?
As he extended his hand with a magnificently forgiving air, and as I was broken by illness and unfit to quarrel, I took it.
William,
said Mr. Pumblechook to the waiter,
put a muffin on table. And has it come to this? Has it come to this?
I frowningly sat down to my breakfast. Mr. Pumblechook stood over me and poured out my tea. Before I could touch the teapot with the air of a benefactor, who was resolved to be true to the last.
William,
said Mr. Pumblechook, mournfully,
put the salt on. In happier times,
addressing me.
I think you took sugar. And why did you take milk? You did. Sugar and milk, William. Bring a watercress.
Thank you, said I, shortly.
But I don't eat watercresses. You don't eat 'em,
returned Mr. Pumblechook, sighing and nodding his head several times, as if he might have expected that, and as if abstinence from watercresses were consistent with my downfall.
True. The simple fruits of the earth. No, you needn't bring any, William.
I went on with my breakfast, and Mr. Pumblechook continued to stand over me, staring fishily, and breathing noisily, as he always did.
Little more than skin and bone,
mused Mr. Pumblechook, aloud.
And yet, when he went from here, I may say with my blessing, as I afore him my humble store, like the bee, he was as plump as a peach.
This reminded me of the wonderful difference between the servile manner in which he had offered his hand in my new prosperity, saying, "May I?" and the ostentatious clemency with which he had just now exhibited the same fat 5 fingers.
Ha!
he went on, handing me the bread and butter.
And ere you a going to Joseph? In heaven's name,
said I, firing in spite of myself.
What does it matter to you where I am going? Leave that teapot alone.
It was the worst course I could have taken, because it gave Pumblechook the opportunity he wanted.
Yes, young man,
said he, releasing the handle of the article in question, retiring a step or two from my table, and speaking for the behoof of the landlord and waiter at the door.
I will leave that teapot alone. You are right, young man. For once you are right. I forget myself when I take such an interest in your breakfast, as to wish your frame exhausted by the debilitating effects of prodigality, to be stimulated by the wholesome nourishment of your forefathers, and yet,
said Pumblechook, turning to the landlord and waiter, pointing me out at arm's length.
This is him as I ever sported with in his days of happy infancy. Tell me not, it cannot be, but I tell you this is him.
A low murmur from the two replied. The waiter appeared to be particularly affected.
This is him,
said Pumblechook,
as I have rode in my shay cart. This is him, as I have seen brought up by hand. This is him, unto the sister of which I was uncle by marriage, as her name was Georgiana Maria, from her own mother. Let him deny it if he can.
The waiter seemed convinced that I could not deny it, and that gave the case a black look. We'll go ahead and stop there for this week. As usual, I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. Light be with you all. Take care. And thanks again.